Alex.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
I am doing well.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. You get to meet the person that kind of stalked you and emailed you and made you a part of her study materials.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad to be a
Um,
part of it.
yes, I'm excited to have you here because I recommend so many people like towards your videos because that is probably one of my main sources when I was studying for the exam. Hi, ABA community, and welcome to another episode of the Radical BCBA. This episode means so much to me because 10 months ago, I was studying for my BCBA exam. And the one main resource that I have used was ABA Exam Review. So, of course, I feel honored to have my next guest.
So I'm Alex Fauché from ABA Exam Review, and we provide YouTube videos and practice exams and questions to help people pass the RBT exam, their BCBA exam, and all the other ABA exams. Practiced as a BCBA in Las Vegas for 10 years and got my PhD from UNLV. So spent a lot of time there. And now I'm based in Louisiana. So that is me.
Are you still focusing a lot on those YouTube videos? Is that like where you're going towards now, or are you still like practicing as a BCBA?
No, I haven't practiced as a BCBA in probably approaching a year, I would say. Had some life changes. We moved and had a kid and that kind of thing. So other priorities took shape. And so we're just focusing now on ABA exam review and trying to grow it and reach as many people as possible.
And you are getting really, really far because your videos are one of the ones that I reached first. And I really like them because I am a neurodivergent, diagnosed ADHD. I struggle with reading. I struggle with just forming understanding of some sentences and things like that. So sometimes really narrowing it down to understanding the content and understanding what you're doing. Not just that, I wasn't even an RBT prior. So I'm fresh in here into this field. I have seen ABA because I was in a clinic where we had all disciplines, including ABA, but it was still very like separated. Like we still really didn't know each other's disciplines, OTPT speech versus like ABA. It's just interesting. We have this newer generation of ABA, and then we have, y'all who have such great experience. I mean, reaching 10 years, I've met a few, and y'all are amazing. And what you're doing for the ABA community is great. And we need more of that. So, what brought you to that? Like, one day you're just like, I'm going to post a YouTube video about this. Like, what was your thought process?
Yeah, thanks. ABA's changed a lot. And since I started, in 2015, it was, I think, 2016, something like that. Everything's changed about it. Research is changing, the population's definitely expanding. But what brought me to what I do now, when I became an RBT, I passed the exam pretty quickly and realized that a lot of RBTs or future RBTs were struggling to pass their exam. So I volunteered in the clinic to tutor all the potential RBTs. We would train them, and then they'd go pass their exam and that kind of thing. And back then, the BT was still pretty. It was used to be a BT, then it became an RBT, so it was still pretty new. So that it was, there was really nothing out there like there is today as far as resources go. I remember looking for RBT stuff, and it was very, very new, so not a lot more today. So back then, I was like, okay, well, I'll make the study guide, and then we'll do videos, and I'm sure I can help somebody if they see it, somebody. And those videos, the original ones, are very, very short, very, very, very to the point, kind of like my shorts or reels I do now. Yeah, I felt that was the best way to communicate to people rather than paper. I can talk to them and speak to them. And like you said, it's the sentence structure and the way I present it seems to resonate with a lot of people. We get a lot of second language English speakers, third language, fourth language, and they tend to give a lot of feedback about how the way I present my videos for them as English learners or second language speakers are much easier to digest rather than some of the other things. So once I started getting that feedback, I was like, okay, well, maybe we have something here. And so as I was going through grad school, both my BCBA and my PhD. That's when I, especially for the PhD, do something on the side, get out of the academic world a little bit. And then, yeah, kind of went from there, started growing and evolving and to what it is today.
That is honestly kind of like my storyline too, and why I got really into like tutoring and really focusing on providing other material. And the reason why I was really interested in your stuff and kind of blending our stuff together is because you still give that real like direct ABA. I know you're like a blend. It's like you still need to know the scientific things, but here's a easier way to process that. And then here's me trying to give examples of like just even less jargony, like just more like approaches of being silly and being funny and just trying to capture that attention, because you are 100% correct. I have a lot of people come to me who English is their second language, which is great. We want that. It's so interesting because I never really saw that in the OT world, but it's beautiful how it's spreading. And I think it's because RBT opportunities are huge, especially with people who don't, who may not have the opportunity to go straight to school right away. It's a field of learning, it's a field that brings in, a lot of opportunities. So the RBT, alone is the way a lot of people go through. So I have definitely received a lot of that. But one thing that is still very hard for, people, especially if Spanish is their first language, is trying to translate all that into Spanish. I mean, I'm interested in doing that. I am a Spanish was my first language. It's now my second language because I haven't practiced it as much, but I can't communicate enough. But I mean, if I'm barely like honing into this ABA English, I mean, imagine trying to learn it in a different language. So it's same thing for them. Like still trying to find out
Yeah.
what English is, and then ABA English, because there's a difference. So we have ABA English and then we have ABA, understanding those perspectives. So one thing that I like to tell people, because they're like, well, why is this exam so hard? And why are we learning, all these words that are so jargony and things like that? I'm like, at the end of the day, it's still a form of science. So if you ever want to go into research, you got to have those tools. Like you can't go in there and be like, hey, I'm here to do some research, but then we don't have any, a way to identify that, right? Would you say
Sure.
like kind of like what words do we use and how do we really check fidelity, and how, all these words that one, I've never even used the word fidelity. I've never used
Hmm.
these terms before in my life. I'm not sure about an English speaker as your first language. Have you heard these words before? Like English words that we hear?
Well, no, I mean, I think the research part overwhelms people because they're, well, I'm not a researcher, I'm a clinician, I'm a practitioner. And you are, but I mean, at the same time, the great thing about ABA is it's single subject, working one-on-one. We don't need control groups. We don't need any of those things. And so whenever you're trying out an intervention, you are doing research. Now, to your question, I mean, not really. I mean, unless you go and you should learn. If you're an RBT, there's no reason for you to ever have heard the word fidelity unless you took research courses or stats. But that's probably undergrad if that, So no, but as a BCBA, hopefully your program you did one or two research courses. But again, it's not intensive enough to where I think it's gonna be intuitive unless you just want to be a researcher. And if you do, you're probably trying to get your PhD, and that's something I wouldn't recommend to anyone unless somebody's paying for it. It's an absolute grind. But no, even as a first language or an English speaker as my first language, fidelity and single subject and all these research terms took me forever to get my head around. And even ideas like motivating operations, which everyone struggles with. And it's a very difficult concept to grasp at first. I mean, when we start at the very beginning, we're talking about reinforcement and punishment in a different way than we grew up learning about it, right? And that's hard enough just for anyone to understand trying to get into ABA, much less now we talk about it in research. And so yeah, so it's I always like to say, the language is the language, but yeah, in ABA the language does have its difficulties and has its differences, and it can be a challenge. So that's what we try to do is simplify it, remove that jargon, like you said. Too much jargon, too much, and just make it relatable. Because at the end of the day, it's about human behavior and it's about your own behavior and other people's behavior. And the jargon is the jargon, but if you can't explain it to me or you, then you can't explain it to a parent, and then what are you doing? So it's really good practice, I think, to hear it presented that way rather than reading off the Cooper textbook or whatever it might be, right?
I like how you said that. I think that's something I'm going to move forward with. If you cannot explain it to, me, you can explain it to caregivers. I love that because that is very true. You're trying to kind of really narrow it down and explain even what reinforcing a behavior you don't want to reinforce even means. Because a lot of times that is hard to understand. Even with like RBTs, I'm kind of like, just don't reinforce it. Like, just that's just not that they're scrolling, they're going through behaviors trying to see what catches on. And so I try to kind of give those more like day-to-day examples, and it does catch on. But again, it took me a while to actually, I mean, I've read the task list over and over again because I tutor. So I do this almost every single day. And I tell my student analysts, or the students studying, I'm like, now I feel like very fluent, but look how long it took me to talk about it every single day, 9 months later, because I passed my exam 9 months ago. And I also tell them this, the important, and this is huge in the exam, competency. Competency, making sure you are competent, making sure you're making those decisions that are needed, right? Even though we know the right answer, sometimes that's not even an option in real life. You're sitting there in someone's home, and those are not options available for you right then and there. So you got to make the best decision in that moment. And so to me, when I kind of start placing them in those scenarios, it's not even about memorization. It's not about, you can memorize that. You could read, all through Cooper, but if you're not putting it day to day, then we're not understanding. And I think that's a great perspective. I think I'm going to start telling them that. Like, you need to be able to explain it because let me tell you something. It's been difficult being a tutor because there is different levels that each student comes with. There's people I can have conversations with who like know it all, who know how to answer it. But then now I'm like, okay, well, what am I missing? Because I'm still, again, I'm doing trial and error and I'm still learning through my process. This is my experimentation as a tutor. And I'm really narrowing it down and I'm finding out sometimes it is like understanding that you walk in your first initial, what does that look like? What are you looking for? How are you explaining that? And so it's been nice to see different people coming and telling me different, parts of it. And I think one reason why the exam wasn't as challenging, I guess, for me was because of my OT. I already know those processes. I already know what it looks like for an initial. I already know what the process of collection, and we don't use big data words like or like big ABA words like that at all. We're not very scientific, I guess you can say. It is a degree in science, but it wasn't as difficult like that. So that is another thing I had to like sit there and really think, Michelle, you have prior experience too. You know what it is to walk in, take over, do direct therapy, analyze your data. You know all that. These are people who may not have had that experience. So how do you feel about BCBA's like not going through the RBT route? Do you think there's still more school systems can do to better prepare them? Or do you think it's like kind of like a mandatory thing? Or like, how do you feel about it?
I think to touch on your first point, yeah, I think there are a lot of BCBAs, and it's just the nature of the job and the people of the tracks who they memorize and they can give you every term and definition and never feel bad about forgetting something on the task list. I still do it all the time. There's just so much stuff. And you just go back and refresh. But yeah, it's just okay, you know what a term is. Can you explain it to me? Now, can you simplify that in plain English to a caregiver? If you can't, then you're not really being successful. And it's kind of to your question about BCBAs becoming or starting as RBTs. I mean, I always felt like you should. I don't think there's any substitute. Now you said you were OT before. Yeah, and so at least were you an RBT as well? Or
No.
not? Right. Yep. So you were never an RBT, but at least you had the same field and you dealt with similar populations and that kind of thing. I think people tend to struggle when they come straight from, let's say, a school system, a structured classroom, where maybe you have pull out or you have aids or you have other ways to deal with it. One-on-one is just it's just a completely different ball game than a group setting or a classroom setting or a sports setting or whatever you were doing before. Yes, I mean, if it was up to me, I think at least part of your supervision would be required RBT hours. Am I saying people who aren't like you're not a good BCBA? Not at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying if it was up to me, I think it helps, you know. Now again, you've got the OT background, which I'm sure helps a lot. But in my experience, people who come straight from other industries, not the therapy industry, and they go straight to BCBA and they pass that exam, the first 6 months can be a huge wake up call as far as what the job actually is and what they're supposed to do. Because the other issue is you do have RBTs who've, at this point, you have RBTs who have been doing it for 10 years. And there might as well be BCBAs, but they don't have the license, they don't have the credentials. But I've had RBTs who legitimately could do what a BCBA does just because they've been doing it for so long. And then you've got this person coming in who, one, they're never an RBT, so they never went through the, they never went through the war that they blah 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 blah, having to you didn't have to deal with all that stuff. And then two, it can be intimidating because it's you're thrust into it, and now you've got to, like we just talked about, explain to a caregiver how ABA works, what ABA is, and how to deal with this behavior. So I think it's a challenge. I think it is much easier if you come from a OT, PT, RBT background. Is it necessary to be good? Absolutely not. Does it help? I think without a doubt.
How are y'all prepping for the new RBT? What is it called? The new RBT requirements for all that. I mean, I'm excited for that. I think it's really important for RBTs to be able to like really hone in and understand what continuing education, credits and CUs and all that are. And I think it's going to be really fun because I already educate, my RBTs well on identifying, observing. I nerd out. Like I mean, I'm just like, what else do you want to learn? Like, I'm willing to give it to you because I really love
That's
teaching.
great.
Yes. So, I mean, what do you have in store for that?
As a exam prep company, not a ton as far as the requirements go. Now, as far as the task list goes, that's definitely more our area, and we're gonna have all the new task list stuff out very soon, our new task list videos, everything we did for the BCBA change, just like the RBT change. And as far as the changes to the task list goes, like I always tell my students and in my videos and everything else, the terminology doesn't change. The task list, there's some additions, subtractions. It's still the same stuff. There's no reason to panic about it. If you're
Yeah.
going to take the test in the new version, right?
That was me. I took it in February, and I remember I started studying around January, and all of a sudden it was like TCO. Now they call it TCO. It's not even task list 6 anymore. It's TCO
Mm,
6, right? So I'm looking and looking, and all I see is, task list 5. And I probably would say you were the one of the first ones to really start dropping a lot of those TCO 6, videos. I think one of them was too also kind of talking about the difference, and you know that was really crucial. So I'm really thankful that you are on top of those things because that's what led me to that. And then you also, I remember, even I don't know where I heard it from, but also describing like, hey, it's not any different. Go down task list 5. That's why they're still here. Was huge for me because everyone was freaking out. I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, what is the difference? Like, no one. And then it's always changing. Like, it really is. I mean, I'm trying to discuss with my supervisor about this, and she goes, I don't know. It changed like 3 more times before, since I've been, a BCBA, and it's
it's
really
about
hard to
every two
keep up with.
years, right?
Yeah.
Every 2 years they try to change it, so it's
Yeah.
gonna happen again, and
In two
but
years, is that
right.
the like average?
It's about every 2 years, I believe they try to upgrade it. That's at least the trend and the requirement as well, like the class requirements, that kind of thing. So if I had to guess, I would say we're probably due for another one in the next 1 or two
Soon.
years. Yeah, if I had to guess. So it's yeah, that's just the reality of it, you know. It's always evolving, it's always changing. So we got to
You're
deal with it,
like,
I guess.
I've been in this field for 10 years. I've seen it happen so many times. You see the pattern of those changes.
I know. I wish I could
And
go back and see. I forget what task list I did. I don't even remember. I got to go back and look.
yeah, I really do want to know what it like what which one
So
it was.
curious.
Was the
Yeah.
exam hard for you?
I tell people all the time, I'm a good test taker. I don't struggle with tests. I will say the BCBA exam was maybe the most challenging exam I've taken, for
Yes.
sure. What about you?
I mean, I think I'm gonna be honest. I think I think it's getting easier. I don't know how you feel about that, but I heard it was challenging back then, and I heard that the fifth was harder than the sixth. I never took it on the fifth.
So yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a couple different things. And people say that, but the pass rate is I can't wait to see the new pass rate, but it's we're not above 60% yet. So, you know, it's not that easy because it's I mean, I think it was 55% last time I checked. So, and I think it's gone down. So, yeah, again, it's
Really?
I looked very recently and I think the last update was 55 or 56%, and it was above 60 at one point on the BACB website. I got to go back and check, but again, that's research, right? It's like the anecdotal, how I feel, and it's versus what does the data say, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think a couple of things have changed. The resources available now are so much better than what I had. Um, there was very little, especially quality. You know, YouTube was not what it is today, especially, right? So if you wanted to get materials, you had to pay for materials, right? Or you had to pay for very expensive group classes. And that was one of the things when I started. I was like, I'm not going down the route of charging this astronomical fee for these groups that clearly were not working given the fact that people were not passing the exam. And that's what always drives me a little crazy about some other companies and what they charge. And I tell people this, not to disparage other companies, but I'm like, you realize that about half of the people still fail this exam, and then the retakes is way worse. So be very smart about the money you think you're spending as opposed to going somewhere else, right? Is it really the resources or is it you that need to change your study habits? So I think that's a big change. The resources are so much better. And I think the coursework has gotten better, right? Like when you think about it, I went to FIT, which was awesome, Florida Institute of
I
Technology,
heard.
which is
I
which
heard it
is
was great. I heard from
I
another
mean,
BCBA.
it's fantastic, and it is intensive. People fail out of it. Like people fail out of FIT, which I think is a good thing. Other programs, I don't think they're when I was going through it nearly as intensive, right? It was
No, I went to
check up.
Capella. Yeah. I'm like Capella. It was
Two
easy.
of
Not
my
easy.
favorite BCVAs ever went to Capella, so I have a lot of
Oh,
respect for Capella. I think Capella actually does a decent job. I've never been there, obviously, but I know it's very popular
it is. I
in the
think they
field.
have great teachers. I think
Yes.
now they're getting stricter. I think that was the
Yeah.
issue. I think they were trying to use a lot of like reinforcement or some strategy too about like repeating the same thing. So we were even allowed to like retake our quizzes like 3 times to like even up a grade our grade.
Hmm.
I almost graduated with a 4.0. And I mean,
Hmm.
I know my stuff, but like it was easy to kind of do that. But then I think they're realizing like, wait a minute, are these strategies working if our, scores for passing first time are very, very low? And I didn't even know
Right.
that until I started my first semester. And in our chats, they're like, have y'all checked out like the passing rates for the school? And I was like, no, looked at it and I was like, oh no. I was like, "No."
Well, again, it's so misleading because, like,
Yeah.
not many people pass it, right? So I think classes have gotten better, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to the person, right?
It does. Oh my gosh, it really does. And that's something I learned and I want to really talk about because it is about the person. And so now I'm taking a different approach when I do tutoring and I tell them, I analyze more now and I'm like, what's your routine like? What are you expected to do? Like and some people are like, well, I'm studying for 5 hours a day. And I'm like, that's still no, no, no. I mean, are you retaining this stuff in those 5 hours? You really have to analyze exactly how that goes. So when I was studying, I actually spent only $120 on some cards that I really wish I didn't spend money on. They were kind of confusing me a little bit more, like the staff meds or whatever. But I everything I did, your videos, I had a notebook and I would go through each one, A1, A2, and I would draw, I would write, I would try, and then I also had a tutor, but I just needed a tutor to confirm that I was like understanding the content correctly. So I would sit there. It wasn't like she was telling me what to do. She wasn't, teaching me anymore. I was like, do I understand what stimulus control is? Like, am I understanding
Mm,
what that means? And then she'll be like, absolutely. So it just like I felt confident that I was processing this information accurately. And then I would find free like questions online, like on YouTube, like free exam prep questions, anything like that, just to make sure I'm prepared on how it's going to be asked during the exam. I wish I could say I didn't spend money. I did, but I did it in a way where it's like I was trying to prevent not to, and it is possible, but it took, I would say, almost 80% of my own effort and understanding to again say yes, like I know this and I'm ready for it. So when I went in and took the exam, I mean, I honestly I knew I passed when I submitted it, and I didn't even feel like that when I did my OT exam. Cool thing, in OT, they actually give us a score. So I barely passed it by like 4 points, like barely.
wow.
And I really wish the BCB exam would have told me my score because I honestly
I
do feel
know.
like it was high. I feel like it was high up there.
I feel like I did. I think I did really well on it. Obviously not going to talk about questions, but when I left, I was like, okay, I think there was maybe 4 questions. I still remember the one question. I'm not going to say it because I obviously can't, but I still remember the one question that to this day I was like, did I get that one right? It drives me crazy. I
You didn't
wish
go
I
back
knew.
and research it and be like, did I get it correctly?
By the time I got out, so when I took my BCBA exam, funny story, I got to the testing center and it was me and two other people, two people from Las Vegas, and then one drove all the way from Utah. And when it was time to take the test, the internet went down. And so I had prepared all this time. This person had driven from Utah to get to this testing center, and we just couldn't take it. So I was like, oh
Wow.
man, yeah. So I like left the testing center and texted at the time my three BCBAs, hey, the internet's down. I couldn't take it. And in my head, they're probably thinking like he's lying. He just failed. I was like, no, I swear the internet's down. I can't take it. I've got to come back like the following week and take it. So I had to wait a whole nother week, in agony and despair. But I took it and
That
passed. But yeah, it was crazy. And that poor person from Utah was like, I don't, what do I do? I drive back to Utah now and come back, I guess. So
wow.
it was so crazy.
I heard that y'all had like it, and then if you didn't pass it, it would take months, right, before you got another testing
Oh my
date.
gosh, it used to be and that's people have no idea how easy they have it now. I'm like old man back in the day, but yeah, back
Yeah.
then, yeah, it did not tell you immediately. Like you had to wait and wait and wait, and like, I mean, it took a long time to get your score back. So when I went in, I was like, okay, I am not failing this exam. I refuse to fail this exam. I only studied, and like to your point, some people want to study 5 hours, and it's like, well, you got to just find your rhythm. And I studied for 2 months, I think, about 45 minutes a day, and that's what I was good.
Wow.
I felt confident, and I did it immediately after leaving FIT, so I had everything fresh. I was like, as soon as I could, I applied, and so I say 2 months, but I'd just taken a pretty intensive course, and I had everything, and then I have BCBA friends who studied a year, and that's what they needed, and
And I think that I took about a month and a half, and I would probably say I studied 2 hours a day, one in the morning and then one like in the afternoon. At nighttime, I always tell them like I just couldn't anymore. Like, when do you feel like more alert? When do you feel more? And I also tell them like have fun with it. Like this is gonna be your job. Like,
Right.
this is going to be something you're going to be doing, you know? And I think sometimes even just having that self-awareness of like pumping yourself up and being confident that you know this stuff is crucial. And then we do have those test takers or people in general who are not good test takers. That is even harder, I think, to help students with because I'm not it's like how do you help someone with the anxiety they get? You know, like how do you support them in that? I mean, I've heard stories of students and things that have happened, you know, during testing and things like that. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know what to say after that. Like, I don't know how to help, you know, at that point and how to freshen up, I don't know, testings because I'm not the best test taker and I did get accommodations. So I did get 8 hours and it took me 6.5 hours to finish my exam. And it's more of like, I needed time to process, I needed time to read it, I needed time to, take a breather. And I did not take not one break the whole time. So, I'm very thankful for that we do have those opportunities, especially, being, having the ADHD or having dyslexia or having anything like that. So I'm always telling people about that opportunity too, because we should all have, an opportunity to be able to do that. I don't know how you feel, but like, why do we need 4 hours like to take it? Like, I mean, when we do ABA, it's time consuming. Why do you think we need 4 hours to like try to process all that information?
You think it should be shorter or longer?
Longer.
More so.
I mean, longer. I mean, by the time we find the answer and we take all this data and we do everything we need to do and try to find the answer to it, it's time consuming.
It is, but I think at some level you need to have it internalized enough to where you can recall it. And another level, you need 6 hours because your needs. I would say people who don't have those needs would only be hurt with longer exams. Honestly think it would be worse off because you needed the 6 hours. I think if you give people the 7 hours or they give you 8, they would sit there and 8 for 8 hours and and they would wear themselves out and talk themselves out of answers. I honestly think it's a good thing it's only 4 hours. I don't think it'd be beneficial at all. And I think at another level, there's just got to be some sort of recall where sometimes it is a fast-paced thing and you need to know the stuff like the back of your hand, right? I think as far as the test taker and being a good or bad test taker, I think part of the issue is people they say they take full length exams, and I have the data from my platform showing people do not take the full length exams. Like they don't do it. It's crazy. If I could show you this data, it honestly blows my mind. Like people buy all these materials and they don't use them, you know.
So you can see
Um,
if they are or not, pretty much.
I can see, how many customers have bought whatever, and then who, the students, and then, okay, what have you done with your exams? Have you sat down and actually, simulated that exam environment, right? And got in the mindset of 4 hours, no phones, all that. Can I sit there for 4 hours and do this? And a lot of people don't do it, And I don't know how you feel, but I've always thought like if you're not simulating a mock exam before your exam, I think that's a mistake. I think you should absolutely try at least one full mock in a simulated environment before you start. I think that alleviates a lot of the anxiety. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Ooh, I like
that's
that
what
a
I think.
lot. I think you just kind of answered a little bit of what I've been kind of like wondering, like how to help these people because you're right. Like, I mean, I never pushed for it to simulate it, but imagine actually sitting there simulating that and seeing how do you feel while you're going through this 4 hour process, no access to anything, just straight going and at it and just seeing where that score lies with again we're simulating that environment. So that's a good tip, honestly, and I think that is something that some students that do struggle with that anxiety and have are not the best test takers, and even those are the ones that have told me I don't want extra time, because I'm gonna change my answer and I'm gonna, I'm just, it's too much. I can't. The 4 hours is perfect, because I just want to get in, don't question it. Cause a lot of times it is that. Like I remember myself doubting myself and then going back and realizing a lot of times when I switched my answer, they were actually correct the first time around. Yeah, I mean, that's honestly great advice. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Any study tips for anyone who's taking the exam?
I just think fluency is still Number one, I think a lot of people think they're fluent. And then in my experience, maybe yours as well, doing one-on-one tutoring, what people consider fluent is just not fluent. It needs to be, if I give you a term, like you said in your own experience, if I give you a term like stimulus control, I need you to tell me stimulus control. And you can explain it however you want, right? Because we're all different. I tell people that all the time. Don't try to be a robot because that's gonna actually hurt you. Explain it in your own words and how you view it, but you need to be able to do that, right? Like it's you just don't have the luxury on the exam. If you're on the exam and you're reading a question and you or sitting there trying to figure out what a term means in the question, you're in big trouble because that's not the hard part of the exam. That's the easy part. It gets a lot easier if you know immediately what the terms are, but if I give you a question and you don't know the definition of a word, that's going to put you you're going to struggle, I think. I think it's and that's just from a lot of experience working with people who failed the exam and they think they're fluent. They're just not, they're just not fluent. Again, take a full length exam. Just do it. It's going to be 4 hours of your life. But the other way to look at it is you can pass this on one shot and then have a new job, make more money, have better work-life balance. And all that is once you pass it, who cares if you lost 4 hours on a Saturday or whatever it is. So that's my top two tips. I mean, you have to do that. And the third is review your mistakes. So if you're gonna do answer 10 questions, like the idea of I've heard people who, think I have to answer a certain number of questions in a certain amount of time. You need to answer each question correctly and then move on. That's what practice is. If it takes you 15 minutes to answer a question in practice, good, because now you've learned it. Rushing through questions and not reviewing it does not help you. That's why in my videos, we look at every answer choice and we explain each answer choice. And the crazy thing is when you get good at it, I do those videos, 10, 15 minutes, and we're doing 5 questions and we're going through every answer choice and explaining it. And so once you get good at it, it actually doesn't take that long, right? So everyone wants to go fast. The only way to get faster is to start very, very, very slow, and then we can speed up. So that's the three I always give. And I think if you can follow those three, which isn't necessarily easy to do, but if you can, I think you've got a really good shot at passing this thing.
Yes, I agree with everything you said. I love how you said if you know it, you're going to get it because process of elimination is actually a tool you can use. If you can sit there and you're stuck between two answer choices, if you know them, you can problem solve through both of them to split that up and see what is the question asking me. And once you go back, read again what is the question asking you, not the whole paragraph, just really what is it asking you. It's so much easier to then there it is. There's that answer. It matches exactly what the question is asking. So fluency really helped me out with process of elimination. And because you're always kind of stuck in between two, but if again you know it, you should split them for some reason, right? And then another huge thing that I also wanted to share before we get going is ethics. No one teaches us how to look for these ethics. No one teaches us the process of when to report to the boards. And I always tell them, go to the boards, the BACB, go to reporting to the BACB. And it literally gives you step by step. The first thing you don't do is go report to the boards. What is the first thing you do? You confront them. So it's like no one tells us these things. And here you are answering, you reported to the boards, you reported to the boards, you reported to the boards, right? But you got to really think about there is a process to these things and you can't go directly to that. So always understand scenarios and situations, safety, any of those types of concerns. What is the first thing you do? What do you do during and what do you do after to just prepare? Think of scenarios like that. So I'm always talking about ethics and where to find ethics, where to find those resources. Because again, I had great supervisors, and those supervisors like, let's hit ethics, let's hit this, let's hit that. And I think that's why I knew where to find all the resources that I needed when I studied. So I'm very thankful for that. And I'm going to continue advocating for that and sharing that because it's huge in our field. But yeah, thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I mean, why a podcast? What made you want to get into the ABA podcasting world?
Um, Honestly, I remember my first TikTok. I just showed a video of my journal that I did with honestly your videos. And it was a lot of drawing, a lot of fun. It was different. And I think it just kind of took off from there. And people are like, sell me your book. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to sell you my book.
Can't do it.
Yeah. But I was like, I got this bright idea, and just I created a journal that went down the task list that honestly your videos really did support. So and then I would be like, hey, go look at, ABA exam review videos, go down this journal that's already pre-prepared for you and start just filling it in with things that you're learning. It's cute, you get to color it, right? It's reinforcing. So after that, a lot of good positive feedback, a lot of just trying to really bring in more, and not and then now it's flourished to the point where it's like people are interested in the OT perspective. People are interested in, like, what does it look like to be a BCBA with all this OT knowledge? And, just it's scary. I went to school and people are like, professors were like, if, OT, you shouldn't be doing OT this or you shouldn't be doing that. And I felt very discouraged. I felt very discouraged. I felt like I had to let go of my OT license because I felt like I was going to do something very unethical. And I'm that person that's just kind of like, hey, like, I want to do the right thing. But once I dive into it, I got into social media and I saw how powerful this field is and like how people are advocating for a lot of that stuff. It just one day I was like, well, I have a lot to share. I have ADHD. I love to talk. So it started off just about me and my background, and people were really interested in that. And then I started to talk about my experience with collaboration and, working for companies that really do prioritize continuing education, that really prioritize holistic approaches. And again, a lot of BCBAs on social media right now are just like, what? That is so cool. I'm really interested in that. In the process of bringing people into the podcast, I've learned so much that it's very reinforcing. And it's like, wait, you went to that university for your, I heard, like I told you, I heard Florida, that the university you went to was amazing. You're the second person to share that. And so if we can get someone who's honestly considering where to go to school, right? Or what has, the best resources, then I want to be that person to, I don't know it all, but I can bring the people that can guide you there. Feedback, and people really do feel very comfortable in a lot of my podcast episodes. So it was just very reinforcing. I'm on season 2 now. Right now I'm doing collaboration episodes. I already have a PT on there. I have an OT on there. I have a mental therapist on there. I have a barber who specializes in special needs haircuts. So it's just spreading just awareness and things like that. And just there's not a lot out there. So I want to be one of those people too. And I feel confident, I do, because of my background being in this field for 7 years and a BCBA for 9 months. Like, I always share that I make this decision to tutor students. I know it's only been 9 months, and to take on student analysts. And yes, I am being supervised by someone with 5 years, because I do feel like I have a method, I have a way, and I've always wanted to teach. And I had to really sit there and say, can I do this? And, a lot of the things I've experienced have led me to believe that yeah, that I can. So it's been fun, honestly. It really has.
That's awesome. Yeah. Don't ever let anyone tell you to let go of your background, because it matters. It helps you become a better BCBA for sure. Because half of that we deal with all day. So the fact that you know how to do it and are now a BCBA as well, combine the two, that's a really powerful thing. So that's awesome. Yeah, this was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate you just being very open to even my emails. I really do honestly appreciate that. I was very excited the first time you emailed me back. Never thought I would have you on my podcast. Never thought I would have a podcast. So this is awesome. And I continue to push people over there for you. So I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here. And that is it for this episode. If y'all have not checked out ABA exam reviews videos, they are amazing. It supports RBTs, BCBAs, BCABAs, and there's also some study material on their website. I also collaborated with ABA Exam Review, and I do have a study journal that has videos embedded in every single section of the task list, TCO 6. And it also has room for you to doodle, for you to draw, for you to have fun. It has my videos on there as well. You could quickly pull out your phone, scan it with your phone, the QR code, and it pops up that YouTube video from myself and ABA Exam Review, just to give you that direct explanation, to make it fun, to make it easily accessible. If y'all haven't checked it out, go to www.themindfullearner.org and behavioranalyststudy.com, or you can look up ABA Exam Review. Thank y'all. See y'all next time.